Hello everyone. This is my presentation on the theory of the gender and power. So first of all, some introduction. Many theories have been used to design HIV prevention interventions, including social cognitive theory, the HIV risk reduction model, and the information motivation behavior model. One theoretical framework aligns several proven evidence-based HIV prevention efforts for African American women is the theory of gender and power. Conceptualizing gender. It is achieved or demonstrated and is better understood as a verb than as a noun. Gender does not reside in the person, but rather in the social transactions defined as the gendered. From this perspective, gender is viewed as a dynamic social structure. Overview of the theory of gender and power. The theory of gender and power developed by Robert Cornell asserts that power relationship between gender and within genders arise from the global dominance of men over women. The theory of the gender and power is a social structural model that attempts to understand women's risk as a function of three different interlinked structures, none of which can be independent of the others, that characterize the gendered relationship between men and women. These three inseparable structures are: the first one, the sexual division of the labor, which examines the economic inequities that favors men. The second one is the sexual division of power, which examines the inequities and abuses of the authority and the control in relationships and institutions that favors men. The last one, the structure of the cathexis, which examines social norms and effective attachments. The sexual division of labor. A fundamental structure in this theory is the sexual division of labor. At the societal level, the sexual division of labor refers to the allocation of the women and the men to certain occupations. Often, women are assigned different and unequal positions relative to men. The sexual division of power. At the societal level, inequalities in power between the sexes form the basis for the sexual division of power. These power relationships are located and constituted in the practice of healthy behavior. The systematic subordination of women, where particularly, is partially made possible through these gendered demonstrations of beliefs and behaviors. Gender and the gender relation associated with the structure of power are often defined and sustained within institutions, such as social and sexual relationships, and medical systems and the media. The structure of cathexis. To emphasize the effective and stereotypical components of this structure, it is herein refers to as the structure of effective attachment with social norms. At the societal level, this structure dictates appropriate, normative, or stereotypical sexual behavior for women and is characterized by the emotional and sexual attachment that women have with men. Exposures and risk factors. The gender-based inequities and the disparities in expectations that arise from each of the three structures: sexual division of labor, sexual division of power, structure of the affective attachment, and social norms, generate different risk factors and exposure that influence women's risk for HIV. The Shaw study, to facilitate our understanding on how gender-related risk factors, exposure associated with the theory of gender and power influence women's risk of HIV. The author and her study colleagues conducted a national representative random digital telephone household survey of the 1,509 women between October 2006 and May 2007. If you need any details of all this study, you can refer to the books. Moving from the gender-related risk factors and exposures to creating variables. As part of the Shaw study, variables were created to match with the risk factors and exposures articulated within the theory of gender power. Another study, the CIST intervention for young adult women. In the 1990s, the epidemiology of the HIV epidemic identified young adult African American women's enhanced vulnerability. In response to these findings, Sisters informing sisters about topics on AIDS. A HIV prevention intervention for young adult African American females was designed, implemented, evaluated, and was subsequently published in 1995. The SHIELD intervention for African American female adolescents. The Sister Informing, Healing, Living, and Empowering SHIELD intervention is the HIV prevention intervention for African American female adolescents with established efficacy. The WILO evidence-based HIV intervention for women living with HIV. WILO Women Evolving in Life, Learning from Other Women was designed as a HIV transmission risk reduction program for women living with HIV in urban, non-urban, and rural communities in the South. Future directions. A refinement that is being made to the theory of gender and power is the inclusion of the macrosocial factors. Macrosocial factors may be defined as dimensions of the social, economic, and political environments that shape and constrain individual, community, and societal health outcomes. Implications for the health, education, research, and action. Specify the goals and objectives of the HIV risk reduction program, that is, reduces STDs, increase condom use, define the community of at-risk women, that is, teens, Hispanic women, pregnant women. Develop an assessment tool based on the theory of gender and power to identify women's exposures and risk factors for HIV using the variables and the skills and setting the references. Administer the assessment tool using well-trained women. Analyze the assessment tool to determine the most preventable exposures and risk factors for HIV among communities. Share the results of the assessment with the community. Use the results of the assessment tool and engage the community in a dialogue to determine which structures to target for intervention. Delineate the strategies for intervening with the community. Determine the intervention channels such as schools, media, church. Develop linkages with the channels. Devise a plan to promote dissemination, implementation, and maintenance of the program. The last one, re-evaluate women use the same assessment tool as in step 4 to assess changes in HIV-related exposures and risk factors. And this is a reference. Thank you for your time. And if you have any question, please leave your comments and the presentation. And any comments is welcomed. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful week and good night.